Welcome, my friends, to this very, very special first time interview I have done for my publication, Athletic Aging, which you can find on Substack. The URL is athleticaging.blog. And this is an extra special episode because I have my friend and personal coach, Erika Snyder, joining me today. Welcome, Erika, to this Zoomcast. We'll call it a Zoomcast.
Zoomcast. Thank you, Carla.
Zoomcast.
Happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. So I want to take a few minutes to brag about you a little bit because I am just so proud of who you are, and I want my audience to get to know you as well as I do. So currently, Erika is a fitness trainer and mental strength coach, transitioning into executive coaching. Now, Erika, you recently got your certificate from William James College. That's what you earned over the last year, correct?
That's correct.
Awesome. Awesome. That's so awesome. And Erika and her fabulous husband, Sam, own an at-home personal training business called Community Fit Project, where they travel to people's homes. They make house calls in New England and provide personal training and group fitness. Erika is also a former professional CrossFit competitor and was also head coach at a local CrossFit affiliate called CrossFit One Nation in Waltham, Massachusetts. And that is where I met Erika for the first time I ever walked into a box 7 years ago. And today, for the last I think it's going on 4 years, Erika, that you've been my personal coach.
Wow. Yeah. Oh
Yeah,
my gosh.
I know the time, right? It's crazy.
There was a pandemic in there, so it was kind of like, what?
And, Erika has gotten me through the pandemic. She's gotten me through some real physical challenges, mental challenges, and I honestly don't know what I would do without her. So she is very special to me. And we're going to do something really fun at the end of this episode. And we are going to actually do a mini live coaching session just to demonstrate how powerful mental coaching can be. So with that, I want to jump in. And so, Erika, just so you know who is listening today, the people who follow me on Athletic Aging are typically midlife women. These are women in their 40s, 50s, 60s who are elite athletes or avid recreational athletes. These are some hardcore women who take fitness and exercise very seriously. And they're also going through a transition in their life, the menopausal transition, or they're already menopausal. And with that time of our life comes a lot of physical challenges where our body is changing. It's very unpredictable. And many times our body doesn't cooperate the way we want it to. And that can create a lot of negativity and frustration and just not having a great relationship with yourself. And, this transition in this time of our lives parallels with a lot of other things we go through at other stages of our life, whether it be pregnancy or injury or what have you. And so I was hoping you could help our audience get to know what your journey has been through your life and how that has shaped the mental coaching career that you have developed and what you're doing today.
All well said. So beautifully put, Carla. My gosh. And thank you so much for having me. And hello to everyone. I'm honored to be here. Been honored to work with Carla since, I believe, the start of the pandemic when we transitioned from being in buildings to not. So I thank you for believing in my coaching, because you are the one that I started it with that stuck. And truly showed me that there was value and people do want to actually hear about this stuff. So thank you. So my journey, simply put, always been into athletics, team sports since 6 years old. Since I could move my body, I've been moving. And that took me to team sports in high school, as well as club sports in college. And as it goes, you get older, in our culture and society, which I think I'll say a lot in this call, you realize that you might not want to be a professional athlete, or some of you may have gone that route and been successful. That's amazing. I did not. I picked a career because I was told to, and I slowly drifted into that career being personal training. It's like, nah, I don't want to sit at a desk. It's not going to happen. I can't do it. Too active, want to move around. So that took me to personal training. and met some wonderful connections there, found CrossFit. So I found a way to keep a physical career happening, which I was over the moon about. Fell in love with CrossFit, coaching, competing. I've been a coach in CrossFit for 12 years now. I competed for about 5 until injury hit. Essentially, I had my whole identity wrapped up in this career, but really more of a persona of someone who was an athlete, who is an athlete, who will always be an athlete, and who will rest on those labels. And what I mean by that is the weight that I had on being an athlete, it was all I could see of me. So naturally, I think what you put focus on, you do well in. And I managed to be able to make it to a very high stage of competition, the CrossFit Games, when Reebok and CrossFit joined together in 2011, which was awesome. I competed individually after that. And the mentality was just keep doing what you're good at. And I just kept doing that. So I surrounded myself with people who knew more than me. I got a job at Reebok headquarters, which was amazing. That's where I got to train with the best of the best. And then I became a head coach and got to meet Carla of my boss's local affiliate in Waltham. So that's kind of the circumstantial description of it. But what really started to happen that became a negative impact on my mental and emotional life was being very, very tied to who this athlete was in me and what I represented as a person. And that was just simply being good at movement and teaching it. And I'm not even kidding when I say nothing else. That's the only way I saw myself. I didn't see smarts. I didn't see intelligence in any other aspect but this. So what really happened is I started to make my world much smaller. And I started to push out any discomfort that would challenge me being not good at something. So when it came to a point where I started to want different things, like being an owner of a gym or pursuing another type of difficulty level of CrossFit, I didn't want to do it. And I became stuck. So ultimately, by the end of my coaching career with Carla at the actual building of CrossFit One Nation Waltham, I was no longer satisfied with what I was good at, and things were changing. So that was kind of a big, can I swear?
You can swear. These ladies know about swearing.
Okay, that was a mind fuck. And what mind fuck I'm really talking about is, oh my God, I want different things. I don't know how to deal with that because I've only been good at really this one thing in my life. And I've brought it from sports to CrossFit to then be able to teach CrossFit and just kind of hit this dead end. So that is when I looked into life coaching, and when I started to listen to podcasts, and I started to turn the dialogue from everything outside of me and what I was told from my parents, my friends, other people, circumstances that were not in my control. I turned it all internal. And what I discovered was I had a lot of thoughts and feelings that were shaped by not me, shaped by how I grew up, shaped by what I thought success was, what strength was. And in short, took a much deeper interest in, oh my gosh, is anybody talking about this? The mental side of coaching and the health and wellness of athletes that looks at you as a human and not just as a machine or robot that can get tasks done or looks lean and strong or can do cool things. And so that brought me to a lot of other different types of exploration in fitness, like starting a business with my husband, executive coaching, got into leadership. Oh my, it really branched out because I started to see myself differently outside of that one area that I had my whole entire life.
So it sounds like internalizing it and now seeing it through a different lens just opened up a whole new world for you.
Absolutely. A whole new world is at this point an understatement. It's like taking the glass here and just exploding it out. In that small world I was talking about, this little glass of water just became this huge ocean of, oh my gosh, I've been seeing myself in such a certain light for so long that I have neglected any other possibility of anything differently. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. That's just how my journey has gone.
That's amazing. So now that you're on the other side of this and you've had formal training in mental strength coaching and you've put this together with your personal experience, and now you're looking at it from the other side. And so when you see athletes like myself and other clients that you have who are going through those stages that you went through, what's going on in their minds? Help us understand what is happening to us when we are having that kind of struggle.
Yeah. So I think the model that stuck with me from the coaching that I started to follow, that took my beliefs from very external to internal, just the world outside of you to your own head, was how your thoughts can affect your feelings and your actions and the results that you create for yourself in your own life, just yours, no one else. So what's happening from a mental coaching standpoint and the coaching that I followed, which I want to emphasize, is one model, it's one way. It's just been the one way that I have seen so much effect of my own life become fuller, happier, and just more satisfying. So just want to make that no, not the right way, not the wrong way, just the way that I've seen wonderful results. Your thoughts are, God, you have 60,000 thoughts in a day. And what we don't know as humans, and what we were told from who knows, our parents, our teachers, society, culture growing up, is that your circumstances cause your feelings, and that the things outside of you make you think in certain ways, and that those things are facts. I'm good at this. I'm bad at this. I only can do one sport. Oh, I don't know. This is the only way I know how to eat. Just kind of very black and white thinking that's understandable in your upbringing. But then when are we taught to evolve past that thinking to see gray and expand our world? Kind of like I explained to you that I started to do. So ultimately, when that struggle is happening, after all I just discussed, you're just telling yourself something that makes you feel something, do something, and then create something in every possible situation.
No, I completely understand that. And as you were talking, it was bringing me back to something that you and I had worked on a while back. And I know a lot of CrossFitters out there in the audience can relate to this. And that is you're in the box, you're with your buddies, you're going through a class, and oh my God, it's the end of the world if I finish last. So
that's a good one.
Yeah, nobody wants to finish last. And it doesn't matter if I, decided to do the RX weight for the dumbbells and maybe I'm taking it slower. Oh my God, I just don't want to finish last. And I remember we explored this together. And to make a long story short, what it was rooted in was something very, very early on in my life. And that is, I grew up in a very judgmental family. And so I was afraid if I was finishing last, that everybody was judging me, that everyone's looking at me and thinking negative things. And so that really made me fear that situation, because the worst thing, I didn't want people to say, oh, what a crappy athlete she is, she sucks, or whatever. And then you helped me realize that and change the thought process around it. And so that's one example. Just as you were talking, I wanted to share that with the
that was
audience.
A good one.
Yeah. And I remembered after we worked our way through it, I said, okay, I'm going to be okay with finishing last. And I remember in this one particular workout I did, and I actually had people coming up to me saying how inspiring it was to watch me sweat and swear and curl up on the floor in the fetal position afterwards. So, and it was like, oh, wow, people thought positively of that.
Turned it on its head right there.
Exactly. So, so that's an example that, that I can give of that
Yeah.
particular thing. Are there other examples that you think other athletes might be able to relate to in that, and those thoughts that are thoughts but not facts?
Yeah, and I think even what you just said, I can break down a little bit to the simplicity of what I was explaining with thoughts, feelings, actions, and results. That model, and bring the focus to your thoughts, what they're creating. Um, First, just in your particular example and what you just explained of just the thought, kind of like this. I like to call it it's like a tree thought, and then there's a bunch of branches from it. So you're afraid, you don't want to finish last. The thought simply is, I don't want to finish last. And yes, amongst those thoughts there's a million more going through your head that have to do with the dumbbell, with the coach, with the people, all that stuff. But from that initial belief that you have, again, whether it's from when you were younger or just the pressure that was put on you by others, or what you started to learn to put on yourself, you didn't want to finish last. So with that thought and what it created, that sends a signal to your body to feel fear. So you have actual neurotransmitters in your head, just chemical messengers saying, I'm afraid of this. I don't want to be last. And without going too much into like the science or the primal part of it, we've talked about this before, like thousands, millions of years ago, our brains were trained to survive.
Mm-hmm.
But they've evolved, or not the brains, but we have evolved in a society where now you finishing last is like the same thing as getting attacked by a lion. You cannot decipher that fear, but your body feels it. And then maybe you felt really scattered or all over the place. And that made you not really focus on the box. It made you kind of like look around. And so this is your actions from what you're feeling, from what you're thinking, is creating the result of the workout, which might be that you really just you created this result of being distracted the whole time, and the time ended up being whatever it was. So the result part of this can be a little tricky, but ultimately we can always connect what you're thinking to what you create. You created a workout that you were not present in,
Mm-hmm.
and those are essentially the results that you got from thinking, I don't want to be last. Because where does your focus go? Your focus goes to every possible thing being last, but not an efficiency in the workout, not a kind of empowering, determined, focused type of energy. So I'm putting a lot of focus on the energy, and which is it's not really acknowledged in our society of what you feel. How were we ever taught that? So I wasn't. I don't.
Me
As an
neither.
athlete, it was just go,
Right.
work harder, do better. So when you say you switch your thinking to, can you remember what it was? You said I'm
Well,
okay to be last today.
I'm okay. Yeah, it's okay to be last today. I gave myself permission to be last today. And don't fret about whatever happens. Whatever happens, happens. And then what
Mm,
happened was a positive thing. And it
mm,
taught me that, well, I was kind of wrong in my negative thinking that people are going to judge me. Well, they weren't. They were inspired by me on that particular day.
mm.
So it's like, how about that? And that allowed me to come out of my shell for other workouts to say, well, I'm not necessarily going to be judged. It's bear with me. It actually can be a positive thing.
Yeah, and so that switch that you said, I'm going to be okay, essentially, with being last. If we were to take those two thoughts and put them together right next to each other, you saw what being afraid to be last created. You saw what giving yourself permission to be last created. And really, even going a step further, you felt good about it. You felt good about your effort, because the thing that's also tricky is going off of other people's reactions, because we actually don't know if some people were judging you or thinking negatively about you. You just heard people come up to you and say positive things, but it's also possible that other people did think negatively about your finish. And that's something that is a whole nother layer of completely letting go of other people's thoughts about you. But how we can do that is by strengthening our own mindset about ourselves, which you did that day. I bet you walked out and you were like, like, I don't even care what people thought. Like, I do see that people thought nicely of me, but you were still in your body feeling so good about your effort. And that's everything. That's the work right there. And I also want to emphasize, it's not about changing all your thoughts and making them from like completely negative to completely positive. It's about embracing the human experience of feeling a range of emotions, and that you're able to accept those negative emotions when they arise and understand them, so that you can um, either allow them or just progress and actually change them from a negative to a positive. Both are possible, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it absolutely does. And then, so that is a good example of a thought process that
Mhm.
is disruptive. Then there's times when actual physical issues are
Mm.
causing disruption.
Mhm.
And one thing I go back to is when I was dealing with the shoulder stuff, and I couldn't even do push-ups anymore in the
Mhm.
way I used to. And I was afraid I was never going to be able to do them again.
Mhm.
And we were having the conversation, a very difficult conversation about, well, you have to do them pain-free. And I'll never forget this. I'm like, well, I'm never going to get to do them pain-free. Oh my God, that means I'm never going to do a push-up again. So how the heck are we going to do pain-free? Um, and so I think that's what a lot of the athletes that I was referring to, and my listeners, viewers today,
Mhm.
are like, okay, I have a physical issue and I can't do what I want to do. How do I manage that? And the different times you've mentioned thought errors to me. This is a
Mhm.
thought error. And so I'm sure that many of us dealing with a particular physical issue are having these thought errors. And I was hoping you could go into what those were.
Yeah. So, um, a big distinction here that I was thinking about before this call was, and this helped me too, is the physical pain that we feel. The thought work that I'm speaking of around it is not to deny the physical pain and sensation you have in your body, but it's to actually look deeper into how you're thinking about it. So the way you had your shoulder issue occurring, you feel something, but then you'd have a thought about that feeling in your body, and it would drive you into this spiral of fear, correct?
Oh, totally, totally. And the fear was that I'm never going to be able to do this movement again. And it's a movement that sets me apart from other athletes in my age group. I tend to be better at body weight stuff. And oh my God, if I can't do body weight stuff, because
Mhm.
God knows I can't do a deadlift, I don't have much left.
Untrue now. Untrue now. So much progress. So much progress.
So much progress.
So
But
much progress.
it was like it was taking away that thing that
Yep.
helped distinguish me as an athlete. It was the thing that I was pretty good at, and
Mhm.
that was what was so difficult.
Yeah. So for anyone out there listening who has an ailment and is going through changes like this, there's the change that's happening, or I would even more neutralize that word and just describe the physical sensation that's actually happening factually in your body. You might feel a twinge, feel like what Carla felt a lot was, what was it? It was like sharp in
It
your
was
shoulder.
very
I can't
sharp.
recall.
Hmm.
So
It was
that's
very sharp. It was pulling. It
yep.
was yeah. It was really severe pain that just stopped me cold.
Yeah, so that's occurring, that's happening. We can't deny that, but in the state that you're in and how you're thinking about it
Mhm.
is, if we can make that a separate entity first, and by separate I mean just see them as two completely different things. As this thing is a fact that's happening, I can't deny that this is like sensation is in my body, but also, is it possible that what I'm thinking about it is not a fact? And what it really meant to you was more than just that thing in your body. What definition you assigned to it and meaning was actually a much more emotionally charged label of who you were in the sport. It set you apart, right? So it's kind of like this blanket, this teddy bear that you that you have rested on for maybe confidence, uh if I'm not far off from that. And I can completely relate. And I think a lot of women can actually relate of, oh my God, what does this mean? So I'm not saying that that pain isn't, or that fear is not valid, but the next step and that error is just a very understanding it's a very practiced way of thinking about yourself, not even about your pain about yourself. And so it's, if you can acknowledge it's possible first that these are two different things. I'm feeling this pain and this is how I think. I think that's the simplest way to bring yourself down from like 10 to 8, maybe. um, and and why I've called it an error before to you is because of the same thing we talked about with the finishing last in a workout. What was that fear getting you?
Mhm.
Where was that bringing to you in your journey? It mostly just made you more fearful to work out or not find solutions or not talk about it more, or maybe even avoid movements, right? So if it's sending you a completely different way of where you really want to go, that is where it becomes a bit of a thought error.
Yeah, and what was happening was the way I was thinking about it, it was like if I try to move out of my comfort zone in the right direction or in the direction I want to move in, what if I fail? And
Mm,
there's another fear right there. And I can't fail because failing
mhm.
is the apocalypse. And then you can find an excuse. All right, well, I'm not going to do push-ups. I'm going to do bench press instead. And then it's that
Yep.
avoidance because of the fear. And I can't count how many times I've wanted to do that, and I have to stop myself and say, okay, what's driving this? And
Mm.
you said it to me too. What is driving that thought? And I think understanding what drives the thoughts helps to say, okay, take a breath,
Mhm.
and this is how you move through it.
Yeah. And so exactly what you're talking about after that step of, if you can have a separation, the way to easily make that separation is doing yourself a favor and sitting down and taking 10 minutes and just writing it all out. And why I say this is doing yourself a favor is because typically as athletes, and in my experience, we need to go find something to do to fix it,
Mhm.
whether it's avoiding it or just doing what we're comfortable with, or PT, every type of theragun out there, um, but realizing it's not getting better, it's not changing, is actually how we're thinking that might need to change. So we've talked about a lot, just every fear you just told me, write it down,
Yeah.
get it out of your head, the dirtiest corners of your mind, thoughts that you might not even know are there, and then just sit with it and separate yourself from it, even a little bit of breath work after it. And that is kind of the only step I want to give, because that alone is huge for you to create space between you and your fears. That's when you can start seeing you and your fears as two separate things, and you and your thoughts as two separate things. And that's when you can really start to understand that I might be wrong. So creating that space between you and your thoughts, and actually looking at them on a page separate from you, and being separate from them, even physically, like they are out of your head. You'd be surprised how much it brings you down from feeling that fear to, I mean, just getting relief. It's like after venting with a friend when you feel better. Um, More and most often, when we're stressed or overwhelmed or we build things up in our heads, we really just need to be acknowledged. And that's what writing has done for me in a ton of ways. And then what would progress into possible coaching, which we have done. And then also my hope was to have you self-coach yourself, which you have done a wonderful job in your own workouts. And you come back to me and say, I repeated that process that we did so that we could rework and rewire what has been so practiced, this fear, this feeling that I've just said to myself over and over and over again, and look at it differently.
Mhm. Oh, that's so valuable. I think writing things down does really help, because then it stirs up more thoughts and more,
Mm,
clarity on
mhm,
why, where those feelings are coming from. I know that many of the elite athletes that I've come to know through various groups that I'm part of, they talk about like the mountain bike riders. One of the things that happens in the perimenopausal transition is anxiety, and it has to do with changing brain chemistry in response to hormones. And
Mm,
so things that, and I'll use the context of these professional mountain bikers, where they would be riding these very difficult courses, the courses that they did many, many, many times, and now they are afraid to do them. They
mm,
have apprehension. It's like, oh God, well, what if I wipe out or what if I fall? And this is a new anxiety about a particular route or course that they've already done.
mm,
So in this case, when you're experiencing just fear over, well, what if I do the what if thing, what if I wipe out, and what if I can't get through this course?
mhm,
How does one in the moment manage that? So it's a different fear, right? Because like for me, it was push-ups and what if I can never do these again? But
mm.
if you're in the middle of a race, or if you're training for a race, and now you all of a sudden are afraid of, I can't do this leg of the course. How can people manage that type of fear?
What a great question. I think you can speak to this really well in your own work when you get to a workout where something happens, you notice that you have this anxiety going on, and then you might again have fears about the future and that anxiety coming back. And you've seen us and experienced us sort through those thoughts and what's actually happening. Again, first acknowledging them, like we just talked about with writing. So, interestingly enough, how do you manage that in the moment? You actually start way before that moment. And even what's interestingly done in sports and a lot of other things is we have a plan for the movement part of it. We have a plan for the strategy, the attack, but not often taught how to have a mental plan and how to deal with a feeling when it comes up. So, to appropriately manage it in the moment is to actually practice it beforehand. Very, very similar to the visualization that I think we've all heard in some way or another with mental coaching, of that you visualize being in the moment. What I've brought to this visualization is actually working through, well, what am I thinking uh, in that moment? What am I feeling in that moment? And you can just do that by writing about it and saying, the race has started. I'm going up the hill. I'm starting to feel like my heart rate is much faster than usual. My thoughts are scattered, and you're starting to just describe the situation. And that is when you can actually learn how to not just demystify what you're thinking beforehand, but um, retrain your brain and what you're feeling to be different in that moment. I consider it just the same practice that you do physically when you're going on a million bike rides to get ready for it, that you do the same thing mentally. You can do them on your bike rides in practice, you can do them just sitting, because what you're actually more afraid of is the feeling and not being able to trust that or own that. This kind of work helps you manage it and own it beforehand so that when you actually come, you come to the race, your brain is actually not surprised or caught off guard by this feeling. So it's kind of cool. We're just like erasing everything around us, the bike, the mountains, the people, and we're bringing it so internal to what we're thinking and feeling and dealing with that beforehand so that we can deal with it better when it actually matters.
That's amazing. It's like a warm up, but for your mind.
Totally. Totally. Warm up workout.
Yeah, and at this stage of life, we all know that we have to warm up a little bit more too, because it takes a little longer, for the muscles to get warm. But I never really thought about it in terms of, well, our mind needs to get warmed up too. Um, you know, because for any kind of, especially the elite athletes who are listening here, anybody that does a competition, it's a real mental game to compete in really any sport. And
Hmm.
so as we have these challenges getting into this phase of life where we are feeling a little bit more anxious, and our head can get in the way, just like our bodies can sometimes get in the way of what we want to do. We have to warm that up too. I think that is incredibly, incredibly valuable. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
And you've experienced it, I think, yourself, just really getting to know yourself more. And it's really about the trust that you're creating with the mental and emotional management of something you have control over. And I think when we feel anxiety, it's when we are tricked into thinking by a very human, normal brain that we don't have control and that we can't control anything. And that's true. We can't control anything outside of us, but we can have almost, if not full control, not all the time, but when it's dedicated and purposeful like this, you really can have control of how you're responding, what you're thinking and feeling in that moment. And even if it starts to feel like you are out of control, you at least recognize, oh, what's actually happening, become this observer of your own mental and emotional life enough to then take the wheel and
Mhm.
steer it where you want to go. And you have been a great example of that, where you've walked into workouts and walked out and been like, so that went really well, like really, like really surprised. And we've talked about how this work has been built up to this workout, from the workouts that were hissy fits to moving through the hissy fits and being like, okay, here's where we had the hissy fit and here's where we're fixing it. And you actually mentioned something before that I wanted to point out: understanding where you're coming from. Compassion has been the least taught. No, that doesn't make sense. Compassion has been the subject that has been least taught to me as an athlete and human. And in compassion in this context is understanding truly where you're coming from. First, where you're coming from, acknowledging it, which I think can be hard enough for a lot of us. But then really understanding, why do I feel this way? Why do I think this way? Oh, I'm just afraid of this. I'm afraid because I care about it, and I care about, and you kind of go down that rabbit hole. And so that's the work we really did through the hissy fits, that actually it turns out to be such a positive thing that anxiety kind of covers. Does that make sense? You
Oh,
just want to do
it
well.
totally does. Exactly. No, it totally makes sense. And I have to laugh because one of the workouts that you gave me to do this week, it was the real fun one. It was the complex. It was the burpee 2 push-up complex and the lunges air squat thing. So this was a body weight workout, and I was excited to do it, but I was a little bit anxious because it had the push-ups. And my shoulder, I just kind of always go back to that. And I had this whole plan laid out about, okay, if the push-up volume is too much, how am I going to deal with that? How am I going to scale it? Maybe I'll do 1 push-up if I just can't do this, if I have pain. I went through this whole thing, right? And I was ready and excited to do this workout. I did the burpee with the 2 push-up fine in the first round. What killed me was the air squats and the lunges, because the day before I did a 45-minute bike ride, and the day before that I did all these big squats, and the legs just were not having it. So the push-ups were fine.
Yep, prime example. Yep.
But the legs were like, what are you doing? I just rode 45 minutes on a bike yesterday. And you did maybe do squats the day before. What's happening? So when you got a plan and then the plan doesn't go as planned,
yep,
what I've learned to do is laugh at it.
If
I can laugh at myself in the middle of the workout and just say, oh my God, this is hysterical how I totally misjudged this. It took the pressure off to say, okay, all right, I'm not going to like tap this out and go all guns blazing. I'm going to do the slow is smooth and smooth is fast, so that my legs just totally don't collapse out from under me. And it actually turned out to be an awesome workout. So
see, and you hear her, she casually talks about this like it's just like, oh, that's just how it went. But what I can tell you from behind the scenes, and I think she's open to me, or open to me saying this, is that used to be immediate frustration. Immediate. And after a lot of chatting through it and almost deconstructing the heavy meaning that's attached to this 1 push-up, Carla has done a phenomenal job with separating that, looking at the evidence to the contrary of how strong she actually is. And there you get the result of a workout that she can say, it really isn't that big of a deal. And it's funny that I had a completely different expectation. So I also like that you brought in, you know, yes, you can have a plan, like I said, a mental plan, but then there's also another layer to this work of, if the plan doesn't go to plan like you planned, it's a really redundant sentence. Can you back yourself up when it happens? Can you have your own back? Can you, as much as we've heard this overused in a way that's like feels like it's unachievable some days, but it is achievable, love yourself through the struggle that you're having. And you have done just a phenomenal job in making that transformation from a thought pattern practice of immediate frustration to immediate acceptance of what is, and then how do I deal with that. And what I've loved about this work is being able to teach the how, um, of it exactly. Not just like, oh, make the switch, accept it. Like, how the hell do I accept it? That's what I didn't understand. Accept it. That's the last thing I want to do. I hate it. But that there's a process of acknowledge, accept, understand, move the needle a little bit, keep moving it. And then all of a sudden you get a workout, not all of a sudden, but over time you get a workout like you had, which is like, that's exactly the work. And it's just, that's an awesome example of it.
Well, Erika, this was absolutely phenomenal. Thank you for taking the time to do the coaching and to do this interview. I'm sure this will be so helpful for the people listening. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm again honored to be here. Appreciate you asking me and getting to share my journey with all these wonderful women.